What is up? Pablo here. I apologize preemptively on my stuffy, more nasal than normal voice. I'm getting over a pretty horrific cold that I've had for the last few days. So apologies in advance there, but looking forward to breaking down this nice big slate we have here, 12 gamer on DraftKings. It is nice to have a real slate. We've had a bunch of sort of smaller slates, and I preemptively celebrated not having Coors. And then somebody notified me in the Discord that turns out the Yankees are in Coors tonight. So I spoke too soon there, but we'll make it work either way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start like I normally do. I'm going to work through the pitchers. And the way I like to look at pitchers to figure out my pitching pool is I go from lowest opposing team total to highest opposing team total. And I do that in conjunction with some basic stats from Fangraphs, K percentage, XFIP, Sierra, and the opposing team metrics as well, how often they strike out against that team's handedness, combined with our projections from Paydirt, which hopefully you're seeing on the screen right now, which I'll use as we go through this. And then usually by the time I'm done with the majority of the decent pitchers that are in my pool, it makes it a little bit easier when there's a bunch of good pitchers, because then we do the opposite. Then we go look at the bats, look at the teams to figure out which stacks we like the most. And then maybe we'll do some hand builds just to demonstrate kind of how I think through putting teams together with the right amount of leverage for a given contest size that people are playing. So feel free to put questions in the chat and any comments in there. Let me make sure that I am actually in the chat. Hopefully I can see the chat. If I'm not seeing your questions in the chat, then put them in the Discord, because I'm not 100% sure that I am seeing the questions in the chat. So either way, I'm going to start. And so the lowest opposing team total to begin with here is Tyler Mahle against the White Sox. So this dude has historically been fine, not great. He's got a Sierra and XFIP that's kind of middle of the road. A K percentage is like not super impressive this year. So, outside of being really cheap, it's not a guy that I normally want to play. At 9,600, he's pretty pricey when we're looking at other options today, like Chris Sale, Pablo Lopez, or Yusei Kikuchi, even, who's a little cheaper than him against Miami. So I'm not sure that we're going to love him. Our sheets don't give him a great 2x or 3x. So he's probably out just based on that price. And I feel comfortable, unchecking him as an option as a starting point. And on a bigger slate like this, I'm gonna be pretty picky with my pitchers, because on my one of the things I always say on big slates is make the slate smaller. People tend to get overwhelmed when you've got like a 12 gamer, and they feel like, oh, how am I going to work through all these options? One of the easy ways to do it is just to say, you know what, I'm not gonna overthink it. I'm just going to focus on the best plays, and you can play a little bit more optimally. Even if you're mass multi-entry player, you can still play a little more optimally in a 12 gamer. So I feel comfortable not clicking on Tyler Mahle or Mahle, however you pronounce his name, against the White Sox at 9,600. He's just too expensive. Our next player here is Pablo Lopez. Lopez has actually been really strong. You can see here his XFIP and Sierra right around 3. He's had a few really good starts in a row. Let's pull him up on Fangraphs just to see kind of how he's done recently. But he's been really good as of late. You can see here Milwaukee, San Francisco, Baltimore, Cleveland. These aren't cake matchups. I wouldn't say they're super hard matchups, but these are not terrible teams he's been playing against. He's been striking out 6 plus almost every game. And he's had a lot of nice starts in a row. From a split standpoint, he's been a little less strikeout heavy to left-handed guys than righties. And if we go look at his opposing matchup today, he's going against Kansas City. Kansas City's been fairly cold. We've targeted them a bunch over the last month. They have not been a very good team. If we take a look at their K percentage, Kansas City is actually not striking out a whole lot. In the last month, they've been the lowest strikeout team in the league. In the last week, which is obviously a much smaller sample, also very low. But to be fair, they've also been very middle of the road from a potency standpoint. Their WRC plus, which is a measure of offensive production, hasn't been terribly impressive. 80 over the last 2 weeks against righties. So I think it's a decent matchup. In terms of his price, he's at 9,900, not cheap. So you're going to need some value in your bats. Doesn't look exorbitantly owned, but is interesting given just how good he's been and the fact that Kansas City is not a super strong offense. So I would categorize Pablo Lopez as a decent, not amazing play, but not a bad play. Let's move on. And I see that Jay Sikemi has a question about, can we fade the Yankees? We'll talk about bats after we go through pitchers. I can't make a decision on whether or not we can play a team in Coors without understanding the leverage I have in my lineup. So if they're going to be pretty chalky, which I'm sure the Yankees and Coors will be, the question is going to be, okay, do I have enough leverage in pitchers I like or my secondary stacks? Number one. And then number two, the other question is do we have enough value? I mean, do we have enough players that are cheap enough to pair with the Yankees? So we'll get there. But let's go through pitching first because it's hard for me to think about bats when I haven't done pitching. So our next guy is Clark Schmidt in Coors. Surprising that the Rockies have such a low total, even though it's Coors, and even though it's the Rockies, they are pretty terrible, but it's still Coors. Schmidt has been fine. He has not been good. His xFIP and SIERA have been over 4.5, so he hasn't been super strong. We have targeted the Rockies in the appropriate matchups. If you need a sort of contrarian pitcher at Coors, I don't think it's crazy. I don't know that Clark Schmidt's the guy to do it with. It kind of depends on our other options, but he's a pretty low strikeout guy. The Rockies have been pretty bad, to be clear. Over the last month, they've been the fifth highest strikeout team against righties, and they've had the second worst or first worst offense. And even if we do this by home games, so we look at just how the Rockies have done at home. The Rockies at home have been still pretty bad. They've been, where are they here from a K percentage standpoint? They've been 20.8, and then from a WC plus, still the third worst offense. So it's not really as big a deal to target the Rockies in Coors as people might think. They've been pretty bad. And the sheets do give him a pretty nice 2x of 50.4%. 2x and 3x are sort of how I like to think as the initial point per dollar value analysis for a given pitcher. And so 7,200 is not a bad price for an, okay, not great pitcher in Coors against a bad offense in the Rockies. And if we just sort by 2x, we do have a bunch of other guys, but you can see some of these are pay ups like Chris Sale or Pablo Lopez, who we just talked about. But we do have a handful of other value pitchers like Ryan Gusto or Charlie Morton, Slate Ciccone, who's 7,800, who are options. So I don't think Clark Schmidt is a terrible play. He looks like he's going to be a little bit owned, but I don't know for sure that we necessarily want to use a guy in Coors if we can avoid it. That's kind of how I would think about it. It's like, it's okay, but it's not necessarily something I'm trying to do unless I really need to. And usually in a 12 gamer, again, you can be pretty picky. So next, let's look at Chris Sale. Chris Sale projects really, really strong. And Chris Sale has been super super strong this year. I mean, we were talking about him based off his true average before he started really going off. I think we were on Paydirt, we were probably a little bit earlier on him than some other sites, just because we felt like he was getting a little bit unlucky in the early going. I don't think he's sneaky anymore by any means. He's been really very, very strong over his last several starts. I mean, he's had 4 starts in a row. I mean, he's had 5 of his last 6 starts, he's had at least 8 strikeouts. He's had just 1 game against Arizona where he had 4. And this is with an xFIP under 3 in all those games. So he's just been, he's been a very, very good pitcher now ever since he got to Atlanta, really, and he got over those injuries from when he was in Boston. So it's hard not to like Chris Sale. He is playing San Diego. San Diego is not typically a team we want to target for strikeouts, but it's suffice it to say they have really been struggling over the last few weeks. I don't know how many games in a row they've lost, but from just an output standpoint, they've been really weak. They, from a WRC plus standpoint, they are looking middle of the road. Strikeout potential, 19% is not really high. So again, this isn't a team that I normally would advocate targeting, but they have been, if we just forget handedness, if we just look at their offensive output over the last week, they've been the worst team in baseball. And over the last 2 weeks, they've been the very middle of the pack. So I'm not super scared to use Chris Sale against the Padres. I will point out that he's projecting to be very, very chalky, so you need to be aware of that. Even on a bigger slate, you're going to need some leverage. So if you play a chalky Sale, just be aware that you're eating a piece of chalk that I think, based on our projections and based off how cold the Padres have been as of late, I don't feel bad about it. He looks like he's completely fair chalk, but just make sure that you have enough leverage. Just taking a quick look at weather before we get too far. It doesn't look like anything we care about a whole lot is at major risk. So Baltimore, Boston game 2 looks like it may have some rain. So that's something to keep in mind as we go through this. Let's keep moving and look at Kikuchi next. Cooch, as we like to call him, he's a tough guy to use. He's one of these guys who at times looks like a real pitcher, and sometimes he really looks lost out there. On the year, he's been, I would not say he's been super impressive. He's been, these numbers are not numbers that jump out as saying it's a guy that you don't necessarily want to use. I feel like we've used Miami more than we've actually targeted them. So I don't know that, Miami's necessarily a team that is as bad as people think they are. I will point out that, they've been pretty bad against lefties. They've been over the last very small sample size, last 2 weeks, they've been the second worst team against lefties. Over the last month, they've been the worst team in the league against lefties. Over the whole season, they have been, where are they? They've been, below average. So this has not been a good team against lefties. I guess I didn't realize how bad against lefties they've been, which makes me a little bit more interested in Kikuchi. But, I don't know. He's a hard guy for me to trust because he's just not a guy who always performs the way he should. It's fair to point out he's had some nice outings. He walked 4, but he struck out 7 against the Dodgers. He played a cold Padres. They kind of got to him. He did well against Toronto, who isn't a high strikeout team. He was fine against Detroit. He got beat up against Minnesota. So, up and down, he's had a handful of bad starts here that I think are probably skewing his numbers. Like you can see here, this start is probably skewing his numbers. So I don't know that he's a guy I necessarily love, but I understand, given the matchup, why we'd have some interest. And he is looking, if we just sort by small field ownership, as the second highest owned guy alongside Chris Sale. So I think he's fine. He's got a good 50.9% 2x and a near 10% 3x, and it's I think that makes him interesting. I can't say I totally don't understand it given the matchup with Miami, and I don't want to overweight ownership on a 12 gamer, so I'm not going to freak out about people combining Chris Sale with Kikuchi, which looks like to be the most common combination on the slate. But I do think it's worth considering. Is do you necessarily want to eat that much ownership at pitching, and are there pivots that we could get off of Kikuchi for? I still don't know that I trust him, and I think that Miami is not a terrible team. So, so we're gonna keep moving. I'm gonna get to some questions after we get through the initial pitching list here. So Zach Wheeler is next. He's playing the Athletics. Zach Wheeler's 11K, so that price really jumps out right off the jump. He has been super strong. I mean, you can see here Sierra xFIP below 3 at 2.5. K percentage on is up there near the top. So Zach Wheeler has been every bit of an ace that we thought he would be this year. He really is like an SP1, paid like one as well. He's been really strong. I mean, he's killed Pittsburgh, killed Cleveland, pretty good against Tampa, 9 strikeouts, Washington 7, Mets 9, 13 against Miami. So in the right matchup, the guy tends to mow other teams down. He's got the Athletics. The Athletics are interesting. I mean, for a little while we were using them near the beginning of the year. Then they went kind of cold, and in the last couple weeks they've started to pick it back up. So I wouldn't say it's a team that I think is easy to pick on. You can see here in the last 2 weeks they've been okay against righties. Over the last month, they've been who are the Athletics? They've been decent. I mean, lower quartile, call it, of K percentage against righties, and from offensive production slightly above average. So it's not a team that is a bad team. They've been hitting in the last week. They've been okay. They haven't been great. The issue with Zach Wheeler is, yes, he doesn't care about matchup. He's the type of pitcher that I'm not going to over-focus matchup on. We just looked at some of his game logs, and he's been strong even in bad matchups. The issue is just really price. I do think it looks like you're going to get him at a slight ownership discount to someone like Chris Sale because he's 11K, but it's going to be one of these contrarian pay-up situations where he's not low owned by any means. I mean, he looks like he's going to be, in the top 5 ownership wise. I just don't know that on such a big slate with bats that we probably want to pick to pay up on, we really want to pitch a guy that's that expensive. I mean, you can see his 2x compared to these guys, right? His 2x is 36%, whereas Chris Sale, Pablo Lopez, Slate, Ciccone, Kikuchi, and even some of these cheaper guys like Clark Schmidt, who we mentioned, it's a pretty price to pay. So it's something to keep in mind. It's going to depend on our value in the bats and how much value we can find in the bats. Again, I don't know that we really care about the matchup for Zach Wheeler, but the Athletics aren't necessarily a team that I'm picking on. So long-winded way of saying he's really pricey, but he doesn't care about matchup, but it's a big slate. So we should, consider other options as well. And I would like him probably a little bit more if he wasn't quite his own, but this year paying up for pitchers so far, especially this time of year when it's starting to get hot and offensive production is going up, hasn't really been a ticket to win GPPs a whole lot. It's been a lot more pay downs with stacking bats than it has been finding an expensive pitcher who nukes the slate. We really haven't had a whole lot of like super expensive pitchers who have won people a lot of money. So it kind of tempers my enthusiasm a little bit on Wheeler. Let's move on to Zach Gallen here. Gallen is tricky. He is a dude who has all the skills, but when the wheels fall off, they tend to really fall off. We played him a week or two ago, and he was super chalk. I'm trying to remember who it was against, but it was against Colorado. That's right. And he got blown up. I mean, so that goes to show you when Gallen is not right, he is really not right. I mean, to get blown up like this against Colorado is pretty bad. He got hit pretty hard against the Dodgers. He was good against the Mets twice in a row. So he's the type of guy, when he's on, but he's just not a guy that you can always trust. And St. Louis has been really hot recently. They've been the 7th best offense against righties over the last week. Over the last month, they've been the 4th best offense. Over the last 2 weeks, they've been the 4th best. They haven't been striking out a ton. They've been all the way down at the bottom. So I don't like the timing of this matchup for Gallen coming off a really bad start against the Rockies, who beat him up. And our projections agree. So he's kind of off the list for me, given we have so many other good options in the form of Lopez, Schmidt, Sale, Kikuchi, Wheeler that we've talked about so far. So Zach Gallen for me is not a guy I'm playing today. Going to the next guy here. Let's look at Gusto, Ryan Gusto. He's 6,200, which just off the jump to me feels pretty darn cheap for a guy who's been okay. He has been sub for Sierra, K percentage just above 20%. So this isn't a dude who's been lighting the world on fire, but he's just so cheap that it's hard to ignore him as an option. Am I misremembering him going longer? Okay. He's only gone like 1 to 2 innings his last few starts, which is surprising because I thought he was a real starter. Maybe, I don't know if he was hurt. I'll ask in the Discord for somebody to elucidate the cause of that, because before that, against Detroit and Toronto, and even against San Diego, he was all right. He went 4 against the Angels and struck out 6. So to some degree, it depends on how long he's going. I think our projections have him going a decent bit because he's got a projection of just over 14 for his median with a really strong 2x of 59%. So at 6,200, if he really has a full leash, he's certainly interesting. Seattle has heated up as of late. They had a bad game last night, but they have been better in the last week or so. They had gone cold a little bit for a little while. They've been slightly below average for the last week. Over the last month, they've been slightly above average. So it's not an amazing matchup. If we one of the things we like to do is also on our research sheets. Let me open this up real quick. We like to look at splits. So I will often look at splits just on Fangraphs. So we can look here and say, okay, this guy is giving up more power to lefties and righties. He's got just under 3 home run per 9. He strikes out a little bit less lefties than righties, so that makes sense. He is a traditional right-handed pitcher in that sense from a split standpoint. Then we'll go here to our true average, and we'll go to our true average splits overall, and we'll look at Gusto. And Gusto's here. You can see he's a little worse to lefties than righties. He's projected to face 5 lefties and 4 righties. So, not an incredible matchup against the Mariners, but they've got a fairly reasonable low total. Crawford, Polanco, Raleigh, Tellez, Taveras are all either switch hitters or lefties. So I think it's not an amazing matchup, but he's also only 6,200, and that's what's causing him to have a 2x. That's 59%. So if he really gets as much leash as our projections suggest he will, he's a strong value play. I'm asking in our Discord if anybody knows how long Gusto will go, because he hasn't gone long the last few starts. But if he does have a decent leash at that price, he could easily get there. So it's something to think through a little bit as we try to find out, whether it's fair to imagine him going 4 to 5 innings as opposed to just 1 or 2 like he's got the last few starts. Let's keep moving here. I don't see us playing Jackson Jobe against Cleveland. He's been a pretty weak rookie so far. His numbers haven't. I know everyone's been excited about him, but he's got a CR next FIP over 5. He's not striking anybody out, and he's walking 13% of the batters he faces. And Cleveland is not a team we necessarily want to pick on. So I don't think we're going to be using Jackson Jobe. Drew Rasmussen is a okay real life pitcher. Doesn't project well today. Toronto has not been a team we've wanted to pick on overall against righties. They've not been striking out a whole lot, and they've been actually pretty potent. We've used them to stack a bunch recently. So I think we're not going to be using him either. So I feel comfortable not considering Drew Rasmussen. We talked about Ryan Gusto. We've got Kershaw again tonight against the Mets. Kershaw's making his second start of the year. He, he's old. He's a legend. He's a great pitcher, but he's getting old. And his first start was okay, not great. He gave up 5 runs against the Angels, who have, in their defense, been very, very strong. But I don't know that this is the slate to use him on when we've got a lot of other choices against the Mets team that's fairly potent. So I feel okay kind of suggesting that we're not going to be using Clayton Kershaw. Next, we have Lucas Giolito. Giolito is 6,500. Wow, that's really cheap for a pitcher who, just a couple years ago was really good. So that price jumps out already as just a really potentially good value. Giolito, this is his 5th start. Started okay against Toronto, got beat up pretty bad against Texas, good against a bad Kansas City team, got beat up against Atlanta. So you can kind of see why he's cheap. I mean, he hasn't been off to a great start. And I think it's a fair reason to be a little bit worried about him. Baltimore, probably not a super hot take to suggest they've been one of the most disappointing, if not the most disappointing team in baseball this year. Just a really poor performance and not a terribly well-constructed roster. I totally understand they had a lot of injuries from their pitching standpoint, but geez, I mean, they have been so bad. 3rd highest K percentage over the last month against righties, and below average offense basically by every metric. Over the last week, really bad against righties, and almost 25% strikeout percentage. A little more offensive production, middle of the road, with the WRC plus of 100. So, and from a true average standpoint, our sheets, don't think that Giolito has been that good. I mean, he's got a true average over 0.27 to both sides, worse to lefties and righties. So I guess I get it if you want to kind of kick a team when they're down. He is only 6,500. His 2x is top 10 on the slate. So, but for a punt at 6,500, I really would like to see a little bit better 2x and 3x. So I don't know, outside a slightly larger field where you need a little bit more of an off the radar play, that I'm super excited to play Giolito. I'd probably rather just play Clark Schmidt for 700 more in Colorado against the Rocks. But I do think Baltimore has been really bad. And, these are decent value numbers either way. So I don't hate it. I wouldn't say I love it, but I don't hate it. I think he's in consideration, but I don't know that he's a priority is the way I would think of Giolito in this matchup. So let's look at a couple more, make sure we're not missing anybody from a value standpoint or from a projection standpoint, and then we'll move on to bats. So after Giolito, we got Pivetta against Atlanta. Pivetta is a really good pitcher, and he's got a nice 20% plus. He's just 10.3. And we talked about Pablo Lopez. We talked about Chris Sale. We talked about Zach Wheeler, all in kind of that 10K-ish range. Pivetta is really good. I actually think I like Pivetta more than other people do. I think he's a gamer. He tends to grind games out even when he's not on his stuff. it's just not a great matchup. And Atlanta hasn't been amazing this year, but they haven't been quite as bad as they started. Over the last 2 weeks against righties, Atlanta's been above average. They've been K'ing way less. So this isn't a great time for Pivetta to be facing the Braves. And given our other options, I just don't know that you need to use him. It is worth pointing out, I mean, he's had spike games. He's had, a 10K game against Colorado, who's obviously trash, but he had a nice game against Chicago, good game against Detroit, who's a decent team, solid against the Giants, got beat up against the Yankees, got beat up at Coors, and then smoked Seattle. So I probably like him a little more than the sheets do. He doesn't project terribly well. His median is really middle of the road here for a price that is up there, as the second most expensive pitcher on the slate, but he's going to come with no ownership. So I think he could be a sneakier play. And I don't hate it if you need a pivot that's not going to be super owned and as a guy who can get there against virtually any team. So I would put him in as a sneaky pay up pivot. Not necessarily a priority, but if you can afford it and you think it's one way to get leverage, I think you could do worse. And I think his range of outcomes is pretty wide. He doesn't project super well, but he's decent. So the other guy we'll talk about here now before we move on to bats is Slade Ciccone, a guy who I'm fairly certain used to be on Arizona. I think this is probably his first year in Cleveland, if I'm not mistaken. He's 7,800, so mid-range price going against Detroit. He hasn't had a whole lot of starts. He's only pitched 5 innings this year, so keep in mind when our projections are. I think our projections are known for being a little more recent sample size biased, which we like because we can jump on things before the rest of the field gets on them. He had a great start against Cincinnati. Great's probably too good of a word, but he had a good start. He had 5 innings, 3 runs, 8 Ks. So high K matchup, but in Cincinnati has K'd quite a bit this year. So I wouldn't necessarily overthink that. It wasn't Cincinnati, which is a hitter's park. But it's, we shouldn't diminish it either. I mean, he did strike out 8 dudes. If we look at him from just let's take a quick look at him last year also, so we get a little bit of a bigger sample on him. Last year, he had a SIERA and xFIP around 4.5 and a K percentage around 20%. So I don't know that we should expect, what he did in his first start against Cincinnati to continue based off of, that first time. On his career, this is a guy who against lefties has been not super strong, 16% K percentage, xFIP over 5.1. But against righties has been really good. So he is a guy who tends to do better against righties than lefties and has fairly meaningful splits. If we look at our true average shows that he's got a much better true average against righties than lefties. Problematically, Detroit has a lot of good lefties. They usually have 5 to 6 lefties in their lineup, and I don't think today's any different. It's not. They've got Carp, Colt Keith. That's interesting. They're not playing Riley Green. This is a pretty watered down Detroit lineup today without Riley Green, and I'm blanking on who else they're missing, but it's not as strong as it's been. So I think Ciccone is a little more interesting than I would have predicted. Akil Baddoo just rejoined the team. He's not a great hitter. And then we've got Trey Sweeney, who's not a guy I respect a whole lot as the other lefty. Cole Keith is decent. Kerry Carpenter is good. But if he can get past Carpenter and Keith, virtually every other player is a righty who's a decent hitter. So I guess I can understand why the sheets like him more than you would expect, because we have a really strong projection on him. And this is going to be a leverage point that we can utilize if it's correct over the rest of the industry. If the rest of the industry projected him the way we do, he wouldn't be 6 to 7% owned. We when you see something like this, you say, okay, hold on. We've got a 2x of 64%, a 3x of 18%, second best on the slate behind Chris Sale, and he's owned at 5 to 7%. Either we're right and we've got a leverage point here that we can take advantage of at 7,800, or we're not. And the industry is appropriately weighing his expected production, and he's appropriately low owned. But there is a discordance here between our projection and his ownership. And when you see that discordance from an ownership projection standpoint, it's something you should consider taking advantage of, because that's how you can pass a lot of the field, by playing a low owned guy who's got a really good projection. So I would just say, that's one place where if our projections are correct, you really do get a lot on the field. I mean, you can play Chris Sale eating his chalk as an owned guy with a really great projection with Saccone, who's only 7,800, instead of Clark Schmidt, who looks to be way more owned. And, if Saccone outperforms Schmidt at $600 more, you've passed, a huge proportion of the field, given he's only going to be like 5% owned. So I like the Saccone play, and I like it more than I would have predicted, since I wouldn't have predicted that I thought it was going to be a great play against the Tigers, who's not a team I typically love to pick on. But this isn't a Tigers lineup that I'm scared of a whole lot. I mean, Colt Keith and Carpenter are good. They're not superstars. And then after that, without Riley Green, I just feel like Sweeney and Baду being the other two lefties, I think it's an interesting play for sure. So, it looks like the weather, for what it's worth, maybe strong for bats, or at least stronger than normal, given it's blowing out there. So just to summarize, I'm mostly on board with the sheets here. I think what I would say, if I had to summarize the pitchers that I'm most interested in, they'd be Sale, Lopez, Wheeler, not so much, just given his price. So it'd probably be Sale, Lopez, Saccone, who I think is very sneaky, Kikuchi, although I have a little bit of, my loins are kind of telling me to temper my enthusiasm with him, because I don't love to pick on Miami, and he tends to be kind of volatile. So Sale, Lopez, Saccone, Kikuchi. I'm not into Molly at his price. I think Pivetta is more interesting than our projection gives him credit for, because I think he can get there against anybody, but I doubt I'll get there in 2 lineups or 3 lineups at 10.3. I think Clark Schmidt's okay. In cores, I would prefer if he was less owned. And then I think Ryan Gusto is interesting if we can get some confidence that he's going to go, 4 to 5, maybe 6 innings. But if he's only going 1 to 2 innings, it's a little less exciting to me than otherwise. Other than that, I'm not seeing a whole lot here that would make me want to play any of these guys. Let's just take a quick look at Emerson Hancock, just because he's projecting with a nice 2x, but I doubt we'll go there. Hancock on the year has been a guy we actually stacked against a bunch. This is 24, so let's go back to 25. So on the year, Hancock has been 4.5, SIERA xFIP for 4.2, K percentage of 17%. So not numbers that jump out as being a guy you necessarily want to be using as a pitcher. I do think he's been a little better lately. Maybe not so much. San Diego struck out 3. New York hurt him bad. Athletics struck out 2. So this has been a low floor, no median pitcher. I don't know. I think it's maybe consider for super large field if you have a lot of plays. But, Houston's actually been relatively strong lately. Houston has been a top 5 offense over the last 2 weeks against righties. And over the last month, they've been 8th best. So he's not making the list for me. So, yeah, my pitching considerations are Sale, Lopez, Wheeler, Saccone, Kikuchi, Pivetta, Schmidt, Gusto, with the caveat that Gusto I would use if we get confirmation that we think he's actually going to play enough innings to pay off. With that said, now we will move to bats. And so I'm going to sort this list by highest opposing team total to lowest opposing team total. And before I do that, I'm going to mute myself for a second so I can blow my nose and clear my throat, given I'm getting over this cold. So 10 seconds, I'll be right back. All right. So big decision here is going to be, do we play the Yankees in Coors? Do they really have a total that high? Wow. Okay. They opened with a total of 7.9. Now they're down to 7.5. So I don't know why our sheets have them as having a total of 9.4. But either way, I mean, they've got a total over 7, which makes sense because it's the Yankees and they're playing in Coors. They are apparently playing a guy named Tanner Gordon. So when I look at at batters, I like to look at their prices because in the back of my head, I'm sort of thinking about, okay, what pitching combinations or other stacks can I fit either positionally or from a pricing standpoint in conjunction with ownership and leverage I need to build a lineup that can work. But, I mean, obviously these guys are priced way the hell up there, right? So you're not going to be able to play. There's no way to pay pay up pitchers with the Yankees on today's slate. You're going to need a pay down pitcher and maybe a pay up if you can fit him with a value stack if you're going to play the Yankees. So just, you got to be keeping that in mind. But when you're thinking about them, they're facing a guy named Tanner Gordon. Off the top of my head, I do not remember much about him. So let's take a look on Tanner Gordon and what the story is with him. He has only gone 6 innings. He has a SIERA that's not great. He has not struck out anybody. It checks out with the Rockies, who every game it feels like they're throwing out the worst possible pitchers. I mean, this is a team that's on pace for a historically bad season. Just really bad pitching in a park that can't afford it. So this guy got smoked by Detroit in his first start. He is a prospect for the Rockies. Let's see if Fangraphs has anything interesting to say about him. He part of Pierce Johnson trade. No, nothing. Sometimes it's, if there's a guy like the other rookie they called up the other day, you say to yourself, okay, well, maybe this guy is a super impressive rookie and he can outperform his expectation because, teams don't have tape on him yet. But this doesn't seem like a guy who's got like an incredible pedigree or anything. He was part of a trade and he's had one horrible start. So, man, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, it's going to be hard not to play the Yankees in at least one lineup if you're playing small field. If we just go to pitchers and we look at our teams and our team baselines for bullpens, and we just look at our true, that's not what I want. We want team baselines for bullpen, HWS ratio, which is a measure of how bad bullpens have been. They've been, the top 3 worst pen, which we knew, Miami, the Angels, and the Rockies. And they've got this guy, Tanner Gordon, who sucks. Or, he seems like he sucks off his first start. And then you've got the Yankees, who are, the second hottest team in baseball against righties over the last month. So I don't know. If you don't play the Yankees, it's not because you don't think they're going to do well. It's because you think that they're not going to pay off their price to warrant their ownership, right? It's not, you're not playing them in a vacuum. You're saying, okay, look, if we're looking at how likely a team to score 8+ runs, they're coming in here at 18%. We've got these other 8 teams ahead of them or whatever, and they're going to be owned at a rate that's, way higher than every other team. So, I will probably have the Yankees in 1 of 2 or 2 of 3 lineups because I just would rather get leverage on being sneaky with a second pitcher like a Ciccone, or being creative with them in a value stack than I would banking against the Yankees not scoring 15 runs in Coors against a bad pitcher with a bad bullpen behind them. So I don't have a problem with them. I think they'll be very owned. You just have to keep in mind when you're building your teams, do you have enough leverage with your SPs or your value stack to make it work? But I don't have a huge problem with the Yankees today. If there's another team that goes off at half their price and half their ownership, you could easily pass a lot of the field. So I totally understand it from a game theory standpoint. It's just one of those situations where you've got a team that's really good against a team that's really bad with really bad pitching. And so if the Yankees go off at ownership, you're done. I don't know that that's necessarily the hill I want to die on. The next team we have here is the Philadelphia Phillies. I didn't realize they were on the slate, so it's interesting. So they're playing. Oh, they're in. Okay, so this has been something we've had happen a few slates. We've had the Rockies playing bad pitching against a good team at home in Coors, and we've had teams playing in Sacramento in this minor league park where it hasn't been Coors, but it's been very productive from an offensive standpoint. It's weird with Springs. Springs was like a good pitcher last year, and even at the beginning of this year, we used him a little bit, but he's really fallen apart over the last few starts. He's pushing 5 with his numbers here, and he's not giving up a lot of ground balls. It's been mostly fly balls and line drives. So, it's intriguing. The Phillies against lefties have been okay, is my recollection. Let's look at them over the last month. They've been 4th best, which is pretty strong. ISO, which is a measure of power, 5th best. So they've been strong. And if we look at our range of outcomes, the sheets think that they have an 8+ chance, which means how likely they'll score at least 8 runs, over 26%, and second only to the Angels. So you can understand why, as a team that's going to be a third as owned as the Yankees, why that gives you a nice leverage score. So I think the Phillies are a very interesting leverage play. Springs has gotten beat up, and the Phillies have been pretty strong against lefties. And this is in Sacramento. He has been a little better over his last couple starts. So it's not like screaming, this is a guy I want to pick on. So would I be shocked if the Phillies scored 3 runs and didn't get there? Of course not. But he also got smoked by the White Sox, got beat up by the Milwaukee Brewers, bad against the White Sox, bad against the Padres, bad against the Cubs. The guy's gotten blown up quite a bit. He's kind of right-sized himself, it looks like, over the last 4 games or so. From a true average standpoint, if we go to him, let's just take a look. He's been really bad. I mean, way worse to righties. So this is something that's in favor of, usually I would say not playing the Phillies quite as much. But today it looks like they're only using 2 lefties, which is probably Schwarber and Harper. Harper and Schwarber, that's right. So it's a righty-heavy lineup. Now, problematically, and Tribe pointed this out the other day about the Phillies when they were in Coors, those kind of are their best players. Like, people don't like playing Castellanos or Realmuto or any of these dudes, Sosa, Wilson, Rojas. Trey Turner's been really strong. I mean, the other problem is Turner, Harper, and Schwarber are all kind of like near Yankees prices. So you're really deciding between the Yankees and the Phillies. You're not playing them both. I guess you could play bottom of the order guys if you want. So you're kind of making a choice there if you're going to play the Phillies, that you're playing Harper and Schwarber who are facing a dude who's way better against lefties because when he's a lefty pitcher, or you're going to have to, just swallow that Springs is better against lefties, eat that salary, and then play some of the other guys like Trey Turner or Castellanos, Realmuto, even out bomb. I'm guilty of not really wanting to play Edmundo Sosa, Weston Wilson, or Johan Rojas. I mean, those are just not guys that scream fantasy production. So I think they're interesting because they're not going to be owned and because it's in a good park. But the fact that Harper and Schwarber are not, that Springs is better against lefties, and they're both lefties, and they're both their best hitters, makes me a little bit less excited than I otherwise would be. So our next team we have is the Red Sox, facing the ghost of Charlie Morton. Poor guy is just really starting to not be as good as he used to be when he was younger. Charlie Morton on the year, where is he? Oh, he's not showing up here. We have Kate Povey. Oh, but probably because it's a 2-gamer, right? So this is like the second. This is the second game, and this is one of the games that has some rain concerns. Roth is saying there's going to be some drizzle, check tarp. So something to keep in mind on a big slate. Do we really want to play a game where there's some weather concerns? Probably not. But if it's looking clear, Morton has been not great. Let's just take a look at him. He's gotten blown up several times. And it has been a pitcher we picked on this year. He, on the year, you can see he's been particularly bad against lefties. And our true average, I'm sure, shows that if we sort by left-handed batters, yeah, he's worst on the slate. And the Red Sox tend to have some really good lefties in Duran, Abreu, and Devers. So over the last month, the Red Sox have been heating up. Maybe not as much as I thought. They've been actually bottom third over the last 2 weeks, and over the last week they've been below average. I thought they had been a little hotter. Maybe I'm just thinking Raffy Devers, who's been better after that really bad start. So yeah, maybe more for minis with Duran and Devers and Abreu, because Morton's just so bad against lefties. But I think you could definitely do worse than playing one of those 3 of those 4 guys or 2 of those 3 guys as a mini stack. From a 8+ standpoint, our sheets think they're very strong. They're third behind the Angels and the Phillies. So if you can figure out a way to build a team with Boston and LA or Philly and LA, and you want to fade Coors with the Yankees, you're going to get a ton of leverage. And you can even need a bunch of shock pitching if you want with those teams. So it's an interesting team to think about playing today. We then have the Rangers against Burke, who's the pitcher for the White Sox. I can't keep these dudes on the White Sox straight because most of them I've never heard of, and it's just not a very good team. Burke has been really bad. He's all these numbers are pretty high. I mean, you don't want to see an xFIP over 5, and these are in the 6 to 7 range. He's been pretty bad to both sides. So, this has not been a good pitcher. Our true average has him as pretty bad to both sides too. So by all accounts, this has not been a good pitcher. Texas is a team we've used a lot for value just because DraftKings has not priced them up, even though they've gotten a little bit better. They've been average. They were really cold for the first month and a half. And then, Seager got hurt, which made it even worse. And then over the last couple weeks, I know Mike, who's been our, 4 tickets now in the live finals. Mike has been on fire, has used Rangers bunch for value. Appropriately so. I mean, they've been really cheap, and they've won people a lot of GPPs. Over the last month against righties, I mean, this hasn't been a team that's been amazing. They've been average against righties, slightly below average. The problem is that they're facing a really bad pitcher, and they just remain really cheap. I mean, Jock Peterson has been terrible compared to what he used to be, but he's only 2,400. Langford's been really good. Josh Smith is lead off 45. So they're priced a little more than they've been in the past. We don't have them as a grade 8+. So, I don't know. And then the other thing you can look at from a value standpoint is just runs per dollar, and they're really middle of the range. So, maybe not the time to use them today. I'd be more excited about them if they were cheaper. So moving on, next we already talked about Boston. We'll talk about the Rays against Eric Lauer. So Eric Lauer is a dude who they've used him kind of like as a bulk guy, I think, with Renia a couple times, if I'm not mistaken. Um, Toronto, Eric Lauer, wow, look at that. 3 innings, so tiny sample size. Let's look at him last year because I know, speaking about Mike again, he's liked to target Lauer in the past. And I try to copy smart people like Mike because they tend to know what they're doing. So I don't know why we're not seeing Lauer here, but let's take a look at Lauer real quick. Tampa has a team we've also been using for some value. This dude's only been going 3 to 4 innings, so hasn't been pitching a ton this year. Has been remarkably decent. Missed last year, I guess, due to injury, and then 2 years ago was pretty bad, especially against righties, which isn't that surprising because he's a lefty and he's not a good lefty. Our research sheets have him as having a pretty bad true average against righties, and look at that incredible average against lefties. So basically, you're just trying not to use lefties against him, and you're trying to use righties against him if you can. Tampa's price is fair. Oh shit, we got Danny Jansen. So yeah, Danny Jansen's just been ridiculous against lefties this year. Let's look for fun. Let's just look at Danny Jansen because the dude has just been raking against lefties. And if we look at the last month, Danny Jansen, 30 plate appearances, OPS of 1.2. I'm sure that will continue. ISO 318, WRC plus of 247. So just ridiculous. And DK just will not price him up. So, man, I don't even know if you want to use the Rays, but you can't ignore those numbers for Danny Jansen until the dude calms down, at 2,700. It's just a dumb price, Let's see if I'd be so very surprised if our hitters projections do not have Danny Jansen as top 2 to 3, if not the best value at catcher. Let's see. We'd be shocked. Oh yeah, okay, good. His median is all the way down here, 5th or 6th best, but 2x 3rd best. I'm glad I said 2 or 3, not top 2. So Danny Jansen, really good value. And the other guys, I don't know. I mean, they're fine. They're fine. I don't know that they're a priority. They are. Their 8+ is middle of the pack. They're all priced up a little bit. Middle of the pack. So I think for me, the Rays are more just Danny Jansen one-off, call it a day. Let's move on. We talked about Detroit a little bit. I think I'm probably not using Detroit because I'm considering Slate Ciccone. They're not going to have a good 8+ because we have them facing a pitcher who we think is underpriced. So, I'm not using Detroit. They've got just basically Carp, and then they've got Carp and Colt Keith, and then it's a bunch of righties. And Ciccone's been a lot better against righties than lefties. So, I'll die on that hill. I mean, if I have to, I think at best I'm not using either Ciccone or Detroit. But I may even use Ciccone. So I think that's just one of those things that the sheets are telling us to do today. Let's keep moving here to let's go back to pitchers, and let's sort by opposing team total, and let's keep deciding. Then I'll answer some questions, and then we'll hand build some teams just to see how things are coming together. So opposing team total. We just talked about the Rays. Okay, so the Angels. The Angels we already know are projecting like gods in terms of value and 8+. I never thought we would see the day, but the Angels have been really, really hot. They've been a team we've been using almost every slate. They have had some good matchups, but to be fair to them, If we look at the Angels over the last 14 days against righties, they have been a top 10 offense. I know that's surprising to anybody who isn't following this closely, but they have been really good. Fifth best ISO against righties over the last 2 weeks. Over the last week, it's been even better. Second best over the last week against righties, 211 plate appearances. Over the last month, when they were still not that good at the beginning of the month, you can see they were average. But they've been really fucking strong. And they're still really, really cheap. And they're facing broken Sandy Alcantara. So I totally get it. I mean, Alcantara has been struggling really bad. He got hurt and he's older. And it's been kind of sad to see because he was a good pitcher before all this. But if you look at him, I mean, he's gotten beat up by the Rays, by the White Sox, Dodgers. He's gotten beat up almost every game. So this is a guy that is eminently pickable on. He's been a lot worse to lefties and righties. I'm sure our true average will show that. Alcantara has a true average that is going to be heavily weighted to be better against righties and lefties. And you can see that he's got a 0.3 against lefties, a 0.25 against righties. But man, he's gotten lit up and the Angels are hot. So it's not surprising at all that we've got this 8+ of top of the slate with the Angels and a runs per money, which means value. That's really good. So, I think you could do worse than saying, okay, I'm going to pay up for a pitcher. I'm going to pay down for like a Ciccone or a Gusto or a Schmidt. I'm going to use the Angels for value, and I'm going to use the Yankees or the Phillies as a pay up, or Boston if you believe in them, because Morton is bad against lefties, and they've got Abreu, Devers, and Duran at the top of the order. So I think just for fun, before I keep going here, let's just see how that looks if we do that. If we just do Chris Sale and we go down to someone like Ciccone right here, and then we go and say, let's play Danny Jansen, our boy, against lefties, the one-off at 2,700. And that leaves us 4,300 per guy. Can we do that with the Yankees and the Angels? Maybe not. We may need to go a little cheaper than Ciccone or Chris Sale. But let's say we play Shanuel, we play one of these pay downs, Rengifo or Vivas. Let's do Rengifo, Moncada, Neto. Then we play Aaron Judge because he's Aaron Judge in Coors. Then we play Jason Dominguez. We need 200 more. So let's go back over here. Can we find that? We can play bottom of the order Yankees instead of Moncada, 3,800. Taylor Ward. There you go. So that's a lineup that's kind of gross. I mean, I would massage this. I wouldn't want to play a 9-2-5, but probably would get rid of Vivas, and maybe you say go over here and say, okay, you know what? Forget Ciccone, he's too expensive. Let's go all the way down to Clark Schmidt. And now let's try again with the Angels and the Yankees. And now we can fit. Now we can't quite fit Moncada still. Can we drop down from Dominguez to? Yeah, I mean, you're not left with a whole lot of Yankees. The Yankees are going to be hard to use today. I mean, we're using a pay-down pitcher, a free Danny Jansen with value Angels, and it's not easy to fit the Yankees. So you're going to have to make some decisions if you want to fit the Yankees. I mean, alternatively, you could just fade Aaron Judge. That is an approach that some of the sharper players will do sometimes when there's a guy that's that expensive. is you just say, fuck it, I'll play the Yankees, but I just won't play Judge. And what's the worst that happens? He hits a homer with 2 guys on. He's not going to bury me at 7K. If you do that, it's a little scary to do it, but if you do it, you're going to free up enough salary to easily do what we were just trying to do. You can play Moncada now. Whoops. So let's say, okay, you play Vivas, you play Moncada, 4,500, and now you can get off Soler, who's kind of not as good as we all wish he would be. You can play, if you find 200 more, you can play Grisham for a reach around, and you're in decent shape. So, that's one approach, is you can just fade Aaron Judge and play the Yankees either way. You can do this, something like that. There's a variety of ways you can build with the Yankees if you fade Aaron Judge. So that's, you're going to be looking for value in your SP2, and then you're going to be trying to figure out which stack you can use them with like a punt like Danny Jansen. I'm sure there's some other punts that we'll find besides Danny Jansen, but Danny Jansen's a nice punt, a catcher. So let's keep looking at bats real quick, and then I'll see if I can answer some questions once we've gotten through the majority of decent bats. Opposing team total. Next, we have the D-backs against Miles Michaelis, who is, by the way, I'm almost 100% sure, the originator of the lizard eating meme that we've talked about in the past. He did eat a lizard once, because he's a weird dude. And I think he talked about, if you YouTube it, you can find Miles Michaelis talking about eating a lizard. I think he may have even done it on camera. I don't remember, but I'm almost 100% sure it was him. Dude has been not good. Sierra and XFIP over 5. He has been a guy that we've picked on a decent bit because he's gotten lit up a number of times. It's surprising because I always kind of thought this guy would age better, but he's already 36 and he's not aging terribly well. He did fine against Kansas City. They're bad teams. I'm not going to give him too much credit there. Washington did okay. Beat up by Pittsburgh. Okay against Cincinnati. Yeah, maybe I'm not giving him enough credit. His XFIP suggests that he's worse than he's produced. And I would imagine his true average is probably a little worse than what we would guess too. It is. His left-handed true average is really bad. And he's facing a bunch of lefties and the D-backs. The D-backs have been decent. They're coming off a series against the Dodgers, and they even did okay against them. Granted, the Dodgers have like every one of their pitchers is out because of injury. But you can see over the last month against righties, the D-backs are a top tier team. Over the last week, they've been top 10. Over the last 2 weeks, they've been second best. So the D-backs are a team that is very respectable from an offensive standpoint. We have them let me get that out of the way. We have them with an A+, that's middle of the road. Surprising, like pretty bad actually, with a negative LevX. So I'm not sure what's playing into that. It might be St. Louis's pen. If we go to team baselines for pen, St. Louis. Yeah, average pen. So I'm not sure why the D-backs aren't projecting better, but they're not projecting terribly well. They are fairly expensive, so you're not getting them for much of a bargain. I just would have predicted that they project better because Michaelis has not been good against lefties, and they've been pretty hot. So I don't know. I don't hate it if you play them, but it's not really supported by the A+ that we're seeing here. Let's keep moving, and then I'll answer some questions. Noah Cameron is a dude I don't know a whole lot about. He is facing the Twins. And let's take a look at him. He's
crashing the party. Noah Cameron sucks. What's up? I'm back from the store. We're cooking short ribs.
Nice. I'm almost done, and then we're going to answer some questions.
I can interject really quick on Noah Cameron.
Yeah, do it, please.
So Noah Cameron is the poster boy for he's going to get his shit kicked in because of regression. If you look at the last month of stats and take a look at
his true average agrees with you, which I pulled up here.
Yeah, his true average is bad. So the main reason why his true average is bad is that if you look at a lot of the time, I look at the differences between xFIP and ERA, and his ERA over the last month is 0.71. His xFIP is 5.03. That's a big difference, my dudes. That's like 4 runs. And, I don't think Minnesota is necessarily that good, but teams don't have to be good to take advantage of massive regression. So his BABIP over the last month is 0.059. He has 100% left on base rate. He has a 6% home run per fly ball rate. This boy's going to get fucked up pretty bad when regression hits. So Minnesota at the price that they are at, especially, they're cheap. I think they make for a great secondary stack today at the very least. I mean that.
Yeah, look at the runs per money here.
Yeah,
they're just over the Angels, because James, before you got on, I was thinking through some builds a little bit just to hand build something to see if you could fit the Angels with the Yankees. If you pay down to a contrarian Kate Ciccone, who I want you to tell us a little bit about Ciccone after this, right. Because he's a clear leverage point from a pitching standpoint based on our projections. Mm-hmm. And it's actually not that easy to fit the Yankees and the Angels, even if the Angels have some cheaper guys, even if you go all the way down to Ciccone. So I'm glad to see there's another sneaky value team in the Twins. If we go to the Twins and just look at their hitters real quick, just to see how they're priced. I mean, they're going to be relatively cheap because of their dollars per runs or runs per dollar. Let's take a look at them. Why am I not?
Go to
there we go. Yeah. So they are priced, they're priced pretty reasonably they're priced pretty reasonably. I mean, if we just sort by order here, 31, 32, 34. Yeah, they're similar. I mean, they're similar to the Angels. I mean, they're similar, and that's why if we look at their, runs per money, they're just slightly better than the Angels, who are similarly in a great matchup against broken Sandy Alcantara. Yeah. And the other thing they have, I don't know if I believe this, but for whatever reason, the field is not going to own either one of these two teams. I don't know how the fuck people are getting up to the Yankees unless you're playing a cheaper team like this. But maybe there's like some. Let's see, if we just sort by ownership, I guess people are using, I don't know, which team Texas. Here people are using this value.
Texas.
Okay, well, we looked at Texas before you got on, and we don't feel good about them. They're priced too much for a team that's not very good, so that's why they've got a negative LevX. So, but tell us about Slate Ciccone, because if we go to that's probably the most interesting thing on this slate so far to me, besides is how the fuck you're going to fit the Yankees if you want to play them. Unless you just fade Aaron Judge, which is not something very fun to do. He is 7K. But this to me is the most interesting thing on our projections is that we have a 7,800 guy who's owned at 5 to 7% with a 2x of 64%. And so tell us why we should trust this projection. And I will tell you, one of the things I gathered from looking at his true average splits last year and this year is that he is way better against righties and lefties. And the Tigers, for whatever reason, are not using Riley Green today or Zach McKinstry. And so they've got like 2 good lefties in the lineup today. They have Carpenter and they have Colt Keith. And after that, they got a bunch of nobodies and everybody else is a righty. So maybe that's what it is, but you tell me about Slate Ciccone.
Yeah, so really quick, I wanted to answer this. When looking at pitchers, what are the best sites to look at? I think that kind of depends. Like if you're over at Paydirt or if you go to Paydirt, the research sheets are free, and true average is one of the most important stats I think to look at because it kind of judges how well a pitcher has been outside of the noise that they have referenced. But if you're looking to just kind of like break down pitchers, look at opponent team totals, everything that Pablo has looked at today. I'm sure that he went through the list. Opponent team totals, strikeout rates, whip. I think whip is really, really important. XFIP and Sierra, those are both really important stats as well. And then splits, something that he just mentioned with Ciccone is that he has pretty heavy splits. He's much better against righties than lefties, and he's facing a team that is going to be majority righties. So those are the mostly things. But I mean, I'm sure that if you go back, like this will be posted onto the Paydirt YouTube to, so you can rewatch. I'm sure that Pablo hit on everything that you'd be looking at as well. Ciccone was traded over from Arizona. He was a failed prospect, but he didn't really fail, right? I mean, his xFIP in 2023 was 4.58. In 2024, it's 4.57. He had some metered success. His strikeout rates were pretty good. His fastball velocity is mid-90s. Like he's good, right? He didn't come out as like a star, but he's good. He's middle of rotation guy. The cool thing about Ciccone is that he has a really wide pitch mix. So he throws fastball, slider, changeup, curve, and a cutter. So he's got a 5-pitch mix. And we like guys who have a really deep repertoire. Usually it means that their upside is a little bit lower. You don't see a lot of these like multi-tool guys being, like high K/9 guys, but it does mean that their floor is a little bit better because they can mitigate damage in whatever situation they're in, so long as they're smart about using. But he came over from Arizona after having like 2 relatively middling years. And then his first start, he just fucking lit the ground on fire. 14.4 K/9 in 5 innings pitched. 55% left on base rate. Like his ERA was a bit too high, but the BABIP and the left on base rate were both too high as well. So I expect him to. Cleveland has a really, really good pitching coach, and their pitching staff is strong year in and year out. They usually get the most out of their guys. I expect them to do kind of the best that they can do with Ciccone as well. He probably should settle into 7-8, which translates to like 23 to 26% strikeout rate guy. I expect him to have relatively low walk rates. I think he's going to be good for Cleveland. So at 7,800, I think that we probably get a little bit of a discount on him. I had him projected at 18 in the last run, I'm pretty sure. I think that he's going to be somebody who we see routinely projecting between 16.5 and 20 fantasy points based on matchup. I mean, technically, this is not a great matchup. Detroit is a pretty good team. Like you said, though, they're not putting out Riley Green. They don't have McKinstry out there. I don't respect Colt Keith much, so it's like, yeah, Kerry Carpenter maybe hits a home run here, but then they just got a whole bunch of righties, and he's really good against righties. So we like Ciccone. He's priced appropriately, I would say. 7,800. I would pay 75 to 8,500 for him most of the time. But the industry is not willing to buy into him yet here, and I think that gives us a pretty good edge tonight.
Yeah, let's see if there's any other teams we haven't hit on that are curious, either from a team total or from an 8+ standpoint. So we talked about the Angels. I talked about the Phillies as a pivot off of the Yankees in Sacramento against Springs, who's been pretty bad this year so far. Makes it a little trickier that he's way better true average against lefties, and the Phillies' 2 best hitters are Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber. But, still, those 2 guys can get to a lefty. We didn't talk about the Mets yet, which we can, to poor old broken Clayton Kershaw. We did talk about the Twins being good value. We did talk about Boston if our weather concerns are abated by pre-lock weather updates, but there's some concern about weather there. We haven't talked about Toronto. St. Louis is an interesting team total with an okay 8+. Zach Gallen has gotten fucked up lately against bad teams like the Rockies. So weird, because he's just one of those dudes. When he's right, he's good, but when he's bad, he just sucks. And if we just go to 8+ here, let's see if we're missing. So let's talk about the Mets for a second. Let's talk about the Blue Jays, the Mets, the Cards, and then I think we can answer some questions and make sure we didn't miss anything from a runs per money standpoint. Not really. So let's look at the Mets. So the Mets are playing Kershaw. Kershaw, we saw, was not good his first game. He's coming back from injury / being old. The Mets over the last 30 days against lefties have been fairly strong. 8th best production and 11th best ISO over the last couple of weeks have been average. So I don't know that they're a team that has been incredible, but they have a good 8+. They won't be very owned because people are still respectful of Kershaw. But it's, if the guy is kind of old and broken, they're not going to be owned. And if we just sort by their order here and look at their price, they are priced somewhat up. I mean, Vientos is cheap, Marte is cheap, but you're going to probably want Pete Alonso if you can afford him because he's just been good and he's facing a lefty. So they're interesting. But I don't know if you have any thoughts on the Mets. I think they're interesting as a team that will be not very owned, but has a good 8+, and that's giving us a LevX that's top 5, right? So that's the result of that.
I feel awful wanting to attack Kershaw. That feels bad. He's my favorite pitcher of all time. I don't do a lot of fandom or whatever, like that kind of stuff these days, but I do legitimately have a soft spot for Kershaw. I mean, look, he was bad. They're gonna let him go out there and get his 30 strikeouts and retire at the end of the year. I think that it's very clear to most that he's only got enough left in the tank to get these 30 strikeouts, maybe pitch 1 or 2 innings in the World Series if he needs to, and then that's pretty much it, man. Yeah.
That's
rough.
So they're an interesting contrarian team.
Really,
they're not that cheap. I'll say that.
They're not cheap, and their trending numbers are fucking terrible. The boost that I applied to them for their trending is negative 35%. If you go to the master matchup sheet, then you'll see that they're one of the worst trending teams in the league. They average 4.52 runs per game over the last 25. Over the last 10 is 2.5. Over the last 5 is 2.2. Their trending score is 2.91. That 2.91 is lower than Texas, lower than Cincinnati, lower than Colorado, lower than Cleveland. I mean, they're not a good team right now, man. So
they're all the way down here.
It's kind of like I think that Kershaw is on his last leg, but I mean, if Soto is just going to continue to watch pitches down the dick, I'm not interested in paying Soto prices for.
He seems pretty miserable.
He does seem pretty fucking miserable, doesn't he?
Yeah. The Angels have been opposite hot. We talked about them. Man, it's hard not to like them given the matchup. How good they've been. It's really hard not to like them tonight. Let me ask you a question because of how Arizona is trending and because how not impressive Michaelis has been. Why do you think they're not projecting better? Because you can look at Michaelis's true average against lefties, and Arizona has been trending really good over the last couple weeks. And that was, not amazing matchups, but not bad matchups either. Let's not give him too much credit. I'm just curious because I looked at Michaelis. He doesn't look super strong. His true average is not super strong. The St. Louis Pen is kind of middle of the road. They've got a good team total, but their 8+ is, just like all the way down here. So I'm just wondering why we think that is.
Yeah, it's kind of a hard question. I don't have a super great answer when I go and I look at their individual player stats in this matchup. I think that they have been. So Corbin Carroll has been good, and Ketel Marte has been good. Lourdes Gurriel has been bad. Naylor's been bad. Eugenio Suarez, outside of that fucking 19 home run game, has been bad. I just think that most of these guys have been bad outside of Corbin Carroll and Ketel Marte, and the models are just like, we're not going to buy it. It's kind of the same thing as the Yankees. Grisham and Judge are still really valuable, But outside of them, like the back end of the Yankees order is just trash. I think we're seeing the same thing with Arizona, where the models are running into this issue where it's like, okay, Corbin Carroll and Ketel Marte are fine. They're good. They're great. But they can't turn the batting order over.
Yeah.
They like once you get past, once you get past Ketel Marte and Corbin Carroll, Gurriel, Naylor, Suarez, Pavin Smith, Geraldo Perdomo, Alec Thomas, and Jose Herrera. That's not a good team.
The way you said it was with extra emphasis is good.
That's the White Sox with Corbin Carroll on the team. You know, that's a bad team.
Yeah.
So
it's fair.
That's fair.
One of the points I made at the top on a big 12 gamer is essentially be picky, right? Be picky because you can play a little more optimally and let other people make mistakes, especially for smaller fields where you don't have to be that sneaky. Like there's going to be enough differentiation just by the nature of how big the slate is that if you're picky and you don't have to play a team that either doesn't project well or is in a worse spot than people realize. Just narrow it down to sort of the teams that are trending well, project well, and same with the pitchers. I'm trying to see if there's any 8+ teams we didn't talk about. We didn't really talk about Toronto, and from an 8+ standpoint, and then from a runs per money standpoint, we did talk about the two ones that really stand out, which is Minnesota and the Angels. Love the Angels. Let's talk about Toronto real quick. They have been hotter. They've been the team that we've kind of laughed about in the past because they have let people down quite a bit. They're facing Rasmussen, who is not a bad pitcher. I mean, he's got a Sierra and an xFIP around 3.5. So this isn't a dude who sucks. I think it's more a function of the Blue Jays just being really hot lately. Mm-hmm. Rasmussen has had some good outings. I mean, he's been good against Miami, respectable against Milwaukee and Philadelphia. He never totally gets blown up. But if we go to our research, our matchups, and we go to our trending 8+, Toronto's been a top 10 team, right? Their trending score has been top 5. So I think it's mostly that they're hot. And I don't know about the R2. Is there R2 sort of more or less, agnostic to the opposing strength of the pitcher? So they're this 13 there.
At 47% on the season, they're probably one of the higher ones. The models are picking up not necessarily on Rasmussen, but Tampa Bay overall. Their pitching staff has been bad. And because of that, they're going to get the boost based on R2.
Yeah.
So
his true average, by the way, suggests he hasn't been. He's not as good as he's been.
Yeah.
His true average is not super impressive.
Yeah. So add that, they get an SP matchup they can win. The Rays bullpen situation has been bad. They're hot, like you said. They're a top 5 trending team, and I did give them boosts. I think 16% boost or something like that based on trend. And the one that the models really love is Dalton Varsho. So there's a lot here that the models just kind of like. They think that the starting 5 of this group, Bichette, Guerrero, Varsho, Springer, Kirk, that's a good stacking group. You can do worse than going with a swing behind that with Luke's into the top 4 if you didn't need a catcher. Models just like them for a multitude of reasons. It's not any one individual reason why they look good. There's just a whole bunch of things that are kind of in their favor here. And are they the Toronto Blue Jays? Absolutely. But even the goo ends up winning people money every once in a while. So
there's something that's nice about them too, which we saw with Minnesota as well at the bottom of their lineup, because they have people like Harrison Bader and the other guy in Minnesota who plays shortstop. He's a utility guy who's always good. Mm-hmm. Is that it's always really nice when you can play the Varshos, who's 4,700, or Vlad, but you have bottom of the order guys, unlike Arizona, in Addison Barger, Team Handsome, 2,900, Clement, who's always decent, 2,400, who have 2x and 3x's that look like this, because it allows you to play a couple cheaper guys without having to play a random one-off, and you keep your correlation. So that makes them, I think, more attractive than you otherwise would necessarily think. So those are things that are nice to consider. So I would say, to summarize, I mean, the things that we talked about from a stack standpoint, from an 8+ standpoint, I mean, the first decision you're making is, are you playing the Yankees or not? I mean, I think for small field, given this guy Gordon does not look good, and it's the Rockies, and they're historically bad, and the Yankees are really good, it's just a matter of, do you have enough leverage to use them with you can't, like, if you're playing Chris Sale and the Yankees, you're eating two pretty chalky pieces. So you better play like a Slate Ciccone and like a unowned mini stack, or you have no ability to pass the crowd, right? The other issue with the Yankees is just price. I mean, even if you play the Angels with them, they're not that easy to fit. And so do you just say to yourself, well, fuck it, like, I'm going to play the Yankees without Judge? Well, the Yankees without Judge, you're left with like Grisham, Goldschmidt, Bellinger, and then a bunch of nobodies.
Yeah.
So it's not an easy decision. And I think when you got Philadelphia, who projects really well in that park that we've talked about, probably overrated a little bit, the park, but has produced. You've got Boston, who's got a few really good lefties in Devers, Abreu, and Duran, against Morton, who's broken, especially against lefties, right? You do have some really nice pivots at way lower ownership. And this is just what it is with core slates. Like, you always have to decide, like, am I going to eat the cores and then get weird? Or am I just going to not play the cores and then do whatever the fuck I want?
Yeah. I would say in small field, you just lock in Judge. I don't even think you have to consider the Yankees in small field. I think you just start at Judge and then just make the rest work. Now, that being said, like, I think in large field, you stack the Yankees without Judge. That's the way that I look at this slate. Small field, start with Judge. Don't play the rest of the Yankees. They're too expensive.
Yeah.
In large field, just X out Judge and stack the Yankees. And like automatically, I mean, Judge is going to be, even at 7K, he's going to be 30-something% owned tonight, I think. It's going to be like 30% owned or some shit.
Yeah.
And so, like, you don't want, even if he only hits one home run and gets a double and puts up 19 fantasy points, in small field, if he does that, like, you don't really want to miss that. But in large field, if he hits a home run and a double and only has 19 points, like, you can probably pass it, right? So I think that that's the way that you play it. I really do like Philadelphia. They have been playing really, really well. They're hot. Schwarber and Harper both look good, even against lefties. I think Minnesota is probably the best play on the slate. They're super cheap. They allow you to do kind of whatever you want to do. It's one of those Paydirt special spots where we find a pitcher who is going to get fucked by regression and we attack him before the rest of the industry does. Like, it just makes sense to me to go with some Minnesota. And then, Angels, man. Houston.
Look at that trending.
Dude, they're just like, they're the new Houston Astros. They are so good this year.
You know what you could do? You could just do the Angels, Twins with a Judge one-off and pay your two favorite pitchers. You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or just forget Judge for larger field and do Angels, Phillies, or Angels, Twins.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
What about you just answered that. So I think that's a very fair take. I think Minnesota is a very sneaky value tonight. I don't think a lot of players are going to be on them. From a pitching standpoint, what we talked about was, let me just pull up the pitchers again here real quick. And what we said was, Sale looks like good chalk. I mean, he projects super strong. San Diego's been trending very poorly. They're not a team that we wanted to pick on, but Sale is just at 9,400. He's still cheap enough that for smaller field, I'm fine eating him, especially against the San Diego team that's been just really weak lately. Lopez is fine. Wheeler's a bit pricey, but he's an ace. Cicconi's kind of our sneaky play if he can kind of continue what he did in his one start against a Detroit team that isn't playing McKinstry or Riley Green tonight, and so they have less lefties than they normally would. I have a little bit of caution with Kikuchi, but Sheets like him. If you want to get wild, you could just go down to Ciccone and Kikuchi and forget Chris Sale too. I mean, and just save yourself $800. And then Clark Schmidt looks like a chalkier SP2 in Coors. He is 7,200. That makes him nicer, but he will be very owned. Like I think some version of Sale Schmidt in small field will be very popular because Schmidt is so cheap. And Schmidt doesn't project that well for us. So I don't know that I love Schmidt as much as the field does. And then the one I asked the crowd about with Direwoke texted me back on the Discord was Ryan Gusteau. He's only gone like 1 to 3 innings. So I'm trying to figure out, I'm assuming you had him going 4 to 5 with our median on him, which is giving him such a good 2X. What he wrote in the Discord was that he's like come out of the pen some, he started some, and so he's been up and down. He said he doesn't expect him to go super deep. So there's a note of caution on Gusto's projection here that depending on how long he goes, I don't know how much we can bank on this projection. So I think that there's value in the Twins and the Angels. I think you can, fade all the Yankees but Judge in small field or play the Yankees without Judge in larger field. I think you can play Sale's good shock. I think you can play Ciccone as a sneaky SP2. I wish he was a little bit cheaper because 7,800 isn't that cheap. And then we're talking about Schmidt, who's chalky but cheap. So you're going to need to find some value in your bats tonight because we don't really have like any super awesome, SP2s to save you a ton of money.
Yeah, and that's where Minnesota comes in, baby. Paydirt Slate, Minnesota. Let's go. That's how we do it. So we play it.
Cool. Any closing thoughts or questions that we should get to? I don't think we have any more questions. Let's see here. We answered the question about pitcher stats.
What about this one?
I couldn't. Here's the issue. I couldn't find the hand builder. Where is it?
It's in the fucking range of outcomes.
Where?
But go to the range of outcomes.
Oh, I thought it was a separate thing.
You are 90 years old.
Yeah, I couldn't.
You're 158 years old.
I couldn't find it. I swear to God, I couldn't find it. And I was like, and I didn't even use Fantasy Labs today for opposing team totals or anything. I used all Paydirt except for when I tried to hand build the lineup. Okay, so let's try to do it. Let's try to do something here for fun to make up for my deficiencies. So let's do Chris Sale and Ciccone. And then let's go and pick the Twins and the Angels because this is how we get weird. And let's go. We're going to click on Jeffers.
Who's lead off, by the way, which is sick.
Yep. We're going to click on Shanuel because what's his face? They're facing sucks against lefties. Look at how much salary we have. It's wonderful. We're going to use Moncada, who's been like somehow not terrible anymore. We're going to use Taylor Ward because he's been hot. We're going to use, let's sort here by median for outfield. This is where you're going to make some decisions.
Yeah. Oh, no, go lock in Judge. Go lock in Judge. Okay,
fair enough.
We got the money for it.
I think. I don't know, dude. Judge is the price of 2 players, right? So, yeah, we do. We do have the money. We do have the money for it. All right, now let's go to second base. Let's go to, we can use either Brooksley or Rengifo. Rengifo projects a little bit better. Let's do him. Shortstop, we'll use Correa. And then we got 4,300 left. We got some extra money. Oh, shit. I mean, this is just, and now we can pay up somewhere where we have $700, right? So, man, can we even get off of Ciccone? Do we even need him? Because we're getting so weird. So let's go back to pitching.
So then you just remove the click from Minnesota and LA.
And let's go to salary here. We've got Ciccone, who is 7,800, and we have 700 left. Now, we're not playing no camera because he sucks. You can get up to Kikuchi if we want, who projects even better than Saccone, and you're pairing him for some correlation with. So how do I unclick Saccone?
So you unclick him on the lineup. There you go.
Okay, and so let's do Kikuchi. I mean, that's fine. You can just do that if you want. It's a pretty nice lineup. Or we can get off of Rengifo for a different second baseman if we want, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm going to unclick Rengifo here, and can I do all teams? Is there an all team filter?
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at all teams right now. If you just want to go to player filters and say
second base.
There you go.
And we want to go to median, and we have 2,900. So, wow, there's Rengifo.
Yeah.
I mean, so I don't know that we want to give up the correlation, right? So, I mean, that's a pretty nice lineup right there. You know, you've got Minnesota, LA with Aaron Judge, Sale, Kikuchi.
Plenty of ownership at our pitchers. We ate Aaron Judge shock as well. Pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
So there's these big slates, you know, I have nothing against people who use optimizers. I mean, there's a skill to using an optimizer, and people who are good at it are really good at it. I'm not one of them. I like to kind of hand build and think through, where am I getting my leverage? Where am I getting my correlation? But I think in the back of your head, you're whether you hand build or you optimize, you're always asking yourself, you know, do I have enough leverage to beat the field I'm in, right? So for a small field, like right here, we've got Sale, Kikuchi, who are chalk. You've got Judge, who's chalk. And then you've got, you know, low-owned, great point per dollar plays in Minnesota, LA, right? Alternatively, what we could do, let's unclick Kikuchi, and let's try one other approach. I'm going to unclick everybody.
So you can just go clear lineup if you want to clear the whole thing. Yeah.
Is we can go. I know this is very painful for you.
No, it's fine.
It's actually a good real-time example of using the hand builder. Mm-hmm. Let's go to pitchers again.
So hit
player filters, and we'll go to SPs, and let's go back to Sale, and let's go back to Saccone, and let's see if we just say fuck. Let's do Philadelphia and Minnesota to see if we can play the pivot off of the Yankees, right?
Yeah.
And so we want to try to get to Bryce Harper if we can. Although, who's at first base? Ty France? He's batting fifth, but I don't know that we're going to be able to fit Kyle Schwarber and Ty France together. Kyle Schwarber and let's table that decision. At second base, we're not using him. The problem with the fucking Phillies is the bottom of the lineup does kind of suck.
Yeah, it does.
You know, so I mean, you really just want Trey Turner with either Schwarber or Harper. Schwarber has been really strong even against lefties. So if I had to pick, I'm probably picking him. Ty France and third base, we got to play somebody. Jonah Bride, 2,300. I know we got 4,400 for a last outfield spot. And
we can get Rojas.
I don't want to play any of these guys.
No.
Maybe I play Harrison Bader for a reach around. And now we've got 1,100 where we can get off Saccone and get up to.
Well, but you've got 6 Minnesota players there.
Okay. We need to build something that doesn't let you do that.
Yeah, I should build that to stop that. That's fair.
So maybe we get off Bader and we'll one off somebody in the outfield. It's doable. You can do Phillies Twins. I mean, honestly, this is the thing with cores. Like, if you just don't play cores, you can kind of do whatever you want from an ownership standpoint and from a cost standpoint. So it's always very tempting. It's just, you just have to like keep in mind that you may die because, I mean, it's the Yankees and Coors. It's a problem with Coors slates. It's a problem and the opportunity, right? It's good and it's bad. I just want to see what kind of pitcher we can fit. So let's go back to pitchers here. I'm going to turn those teams off. Let's just see. Okay, if we go back up here, can we fit Lopez and Sale? Get 2,300 for a punt, one off. So if we go back to hitters, why do we keep doing that? And we go outfield, and we just sort by salary. We can play. Yeah, you don't really want to play anything.
Oh no, he's 2,400. Yeah, you're pretty shot.
Yeah, you don't have to play Lopez, right? Let's go back to pitcher. I mean, Lopez projects okay for us, but not amazing. You can go back down to Kikuchi. Forget Lopez. God, I'm going to have to play some Kikuchi. It's going to make me sad.
Yeah.
I don't know why I don't trust him. I mean, the Miami hasn't been good against lefties by any means. They've been actually really bad against lefties.
Yeah.
Oh, but look at this. You can play like a Taylor Ward one off.
There you go. Yeah, that's pretty good.
And then you even have $200 if you want to try to fit, like instead of France, you can go and say, you know what, forget France. Let me do Shanuel for 35. But then the problem is we're going to end up again. But maybe the way to do it is you do a Twins Angels with like Trey Turner and Kyle Schwarber.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, and then that
Twins Angels are the key to the slate.
That gives you quite a bit if you don't play Judge, right? Like if you don't play Judge, then you can get two Philadelphia guys that are awesome. If you play Judge, then you end up playing Rengifo, right? So that's how it goes.
Yeah. But it is nice that Minnesota and LA are both really good value in good spots, and they don't look that owned, and they allow you to get to Sale Kikuchi, and not worry about pitcher ownership because they're not owned value stack. Because sometimes when there's a value stack that's really obvious, it kind of sucks because then you play the chalky pitcher, but then you're eating the chalky value stack too, and then you have to figure out a not chalky, not value stack, which is hard to find. So I think the key to the slate is just pick your favorite between Sale, Kikuchi, Lopez. If you can get up to Wheeler, if you have the guts to play Ciccone. Schmidt projects okay, but he's going to be chalky as an SP2 at Coors. And then for payups, you're thinking about Philadelphia instead of the Yankees. For value, you're thinking about Minnesota and LA. And just not to forget anybody, Boston, which we talked about being good against Morton lefties specifically, but be wary of the weather. And that's it. I mean, it's a pretty easy slate to make smaller for a big slate. Yeah. So we like
really
those. We like the slates.
Run back to the hand builder really quick, just so that we can show one more thing here.
Yep.
So clear out that lineup. And then in the positions up there for the filters, just remove first base. Just let it be all positions again. And then, so now select Chris Sale. And Slate, whatever the fuck, however you pronounce the name. Ciccone, whatever. And then go to quick fill options. And choose Minnesota. And autofill size 5. And then just hit that quick fill button. And
how does this prioritize then? Based off projection or median or what?
So that fill order, that is going to give you a couple options for where we are building from the lineup. So the autofill order is the top 1 through 5 right now. So it'll autofill the top 5 places. And then you also have mid 4 through 8 and wrap 7 through 2.
Okay.
And I just wanted to show really quick that look at the base of this lineup. Like Chris Sale plus the Sony, who looks great, plus the 1 through 5 of Minnesota leaves you almost $5,200 remaining per player. That's sick. And it takes up both the priority positions of catcher and shortstop. That's beautiful. That's like the best base that you could ask for. So I just wanted to show that.
Nice.
I'm just saying, Minnesota's the shit today. That's a DFS dream right there. That kind of lineup.
Yeah, Minnesota's facing the dude Cameron, who you talked about being trash.
Yeah.
And that's why we have an 8+ like this, and a top score that's top 5, and 11x that's strong because they're not owned.
Yeah, Minnesota about to fucking dominate the slate. That's my easiest click of the slate is Minnesota 1 through 5. Just fucking jam them in.
And then the KC Penn is nothing to write home about either. They're bottom third.
Right.
Yeah. Minnesota's strong. LA is good value too. And then just figure out which payups you like the most between the Phillies or some course chalk. We're in good shape. All right. I hope people found this useful. An hour and a half till lock. So plenty of time to build and listen on 2X. Mm-hmm. And we'll keep smashing these slates. We've been having a really good year. We got to hit that $1 million mark soon in terms of winnings. Hopefully, maybe we can even get there by mid-July. Another 6 weeks.
There. Yep, we're getting there. We're at 510, I think. 515, 510,000. And that's without the winnings from the mystery Paydirt member over at FanDuel. I don't even I'm pretty sure we're probably at like 600K. So.
The mystery winner. Someday we'll find out who he is.
Someday. Cool. Yeah. All right. This has been great.
All right. Thanks, brother. Great job with the hand builder, by the way. I will be using it now that I know where it is.
Attaboy. All right. If you guys need anything else, obviously go over to paydirtdfs.com. Community Discord is free to join. Sign up for the newsletter. Sign up for a subscription so that you can beat everybody else with Minnesota stacks, all that kind of shit. We will talk to you.